Sometimes it feels a bit embarrassing to say, but yes, I am a stripper. Not every day, as I only do it to pay tuition fees for my massage therapy course, but I work from Saturday to Tuesday in the strip club. There is this one guy, I do not know his name, so I will just call him Dave, who comes in on Saturdays at 11 p.m. He throws two measly $1 bills, yikes, and seems as if he is about to leave, but then he just sits there on the red leather and stares at me as I do my tricks. He is not the usual sort of guy we get in here. We usually get businessmen or a hierarchy of people, really. But Dave looks like your textbook definition of homeless. Long hair and beard, old brown jacket, holey boots, the whole lot. 2 hours pass and I have been doing my Gemini Matrix sun wheels, you name it, on repeat. I do a little dance for the audience before I'm about to dress down and let Tasha take over, as my shift for the night is done. I walk off, and Tasha gets on the other podium when I get a sense that someone is watching me. I am used to being stared at and watched, of course, but this stare does not feel the same to me. I can just feel it as him. I ignore it and change into warmer clothes, put on my flats, take off my fake eyelashes, and leave at 1:30 a.m. to go home. As I am walking, I get the feeling again. I am close to my apartment now, and the girls and I have all been stalked before or followed to our cars. It is even worse for me as I'm a 5'6" petite girl, and nothing says vulnerable like short girls in the early hours of the morning. This guy has at least 6 inches on me, so I turn around. And guess who? Dave. He sees me and gets this excited look and walks faster towards me. I run onto the next street, a way busier one, and do not even bother to look back. I do not want to see his creepy-ass face again. My apartment is on the first floor and it is coming up on the next street, so I text my roommate Mike to let me in and be at the door. I sneak one peek back but see no sign of Dave, and I keep walking. Mike is at the door. I duck in and tell him what has happened, and he asks me if I want to call the cops. I brush it off as it is probably just some lonely guy with nothing else to do. That night I get a knock at my window. It is pretty scary as we live on the first floor and my bedroom is at the side of our apartment with a big window. The street lamp outside reflects through my window and there is a big man's silhouette. I look out but there's no one. I call for Mike and he looks outside but finds no one. So I guess I must have been half awake and paranoid and go back to sleep. The next night I am woken up by a flashlight being shown in my room. I spin around and this time I catch the culprit. Dave. I am beyond pissed. I give him the finger and get out my phone to call the cops. He runs off and the cops come over a few minutes later. They suggest I install CCTV, but I am pretty much broke, so they say they will do a patrol of a couple blocks and see if they find anyone matching my description. It is Monday and I am going home earlier at 10 p.m. I have one of Mike's prop guns on me. He does acting, not a real gun. When I am opening my door and someone shouts, "Man, I just wanted a hug." Dave is out of breath and coming around the corner of where I have just come from. I instantly pull the gun from under my top and tell him not to come any closer. I keep it out of public view though, as there are a couple of kids on the street. He puts his hands up but keeps walking closer. I back into my door and he is saying, "I'm not a bad man, I just really like you," repeatedly when I shout, "I have kids, don't shoot me." It catches the attention of two women and their kids down the street enough for him to run away. And I get inside and call Mike. We agree to swap bedrooms for the night and, for once, I actually get some sleep. I do not think I have ever been so grateful for a windowless bedroom. This was last night. Now I am getting a taxi home and sleeping in Mike's room. That night around 3 a.m. if I remember exactly. We get knocks at the front door. Mike is still up, so he gets up to open it. No one is there. I get up and go sit in the living room with him. These were pretty violent knocks, and it went on for about an hour. We were at the back of the house overlooking our apartment complex garden when they kept knocking, and we eventually ignored it, knowing full well who it was. Next, they rattled the garden gate, which was shut at this time but directly next to us, so we craned our necks over the balcony to look. Dave. Mike was yelling at him to screw off, but he persisted to pull at the gate. We called the police again and they came the next morning as Dave had already left. A few neighbors had complained too, so they called the company who owns our apartments and asked them to install some CCTV. He never came back to the strip club after that Saturday, and I have class today, but I dread to think about what he will pull tonight. I seriously do not know what to do. I have no money to move because the deposits are way too high. Mike is putting in some drapes over my window. I do not know whether to call the cops again because I feel like I am pestering them, so please give me some advice. Hi everyone, I am sorry I have left you all hanging for the past few days. I have been really busy doing work as I am finally planning to leave the club and become a beauty therapist like I have always wanted to, and have been applying to join or rent out salons. So I have replied to a few private messages over the past 3 days, and read some of the comments, to which I would like to answer some people's questions quickly. Yes, I am Canadian, although I do not live in Canada anymore. Also, I live in a quieter part of my city, so I never worried about drapes. I think I was a bit misunderstood when I said some of the girls had been stalked before, as someone thought I meant by Dave. I don't doubt Dave has stalked people before, but I meant the girls and I find it a norm to be followed to our cars, etc. None of us have met Dave before. Also, I don't want to get a real gun as I sleepwalk sometimes, which is a risk, and I just do not really like guns overall. I did not intentionally lead Dave to my house. I thought I'd lost him. If I moved in with one of the other girls, he would still follow me from work. Also, thank you for everyone's lovely comments. It has seriously helped me a lot, and I have bought mace and swapped rooms with Mike thanks to your help. I could not ask for better advice. So this picks off from Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning were the biggest relief. No sign of Dave whatsoever. I got taxis to and from class, and so Mike and I thought it would be easier for me to move back into our own rooms. I have got mace in my pocket, thanks Walmart, so I did not think it would be too big a risk. It is 11 p.m. when I get home, and Mike is in the living room having a joint with our friend Daniel. I sit down and join them, ask what is up, and Mike says Dave had come knocking a few minutes earlier. I was completely gutted. I said holy hell, and Daniel said, yeah, you literally just missed him. He was laughing, but Mike could see the seriousness in my face, and then I just completely broke down crying. I really thought Dave was gone for good. They both helped comfort me and said they were waiting for me to get home to call the cops. We called them up and they said they would come over, but then Mike just said no because the apartment absolutely reeked of marijuana. So we said we would come down the next day and I would give them my diary as I had noted down everything that had happened with Dave. Daniel went home at 3 and Mike and I were so exhausted we just fell asleep on the couch together. I could not sleep that night. I was just waiting for Dave to come through the door any minute. I had nightmares when I eventually fell asleep, so I spent the rest of the night laying awake. This had to stop. Work was closed the next day for upgrades and Mike does not work on weekends, so we went down to the station to see what they could do. I felt so stupid. The only thing I could do was describe his appearance, and I couldn't really answer the questions they were asking. I did not know his name or where he lived. The only thing they did was a sketch for reference, and they would not put out someone to stay at the apartment or around it. Mike and I left and agreed that we would find the answer to those questions ourselves. This was now last night, Saturday, 11 p.m. Mike is out and should be home any minute when I am watching television in my room. I am completely paranoid, looking through my drapes every minute or so. And for once, Dave is actually in full view. He is about a block away from me on the other side of the street. In a panic, I call Mike. I ask him where he is. He is coming down the road. I tell him Dave is almost here. He tells me to turn all the bright lights off, pretend I am not there. I turn off the hall and my bedroom light, leaving a floor light on. I shut my drapes and get behind the wall in fear of the gaps. He says he is going to follow him. I did not really want to be home alone, but I agreed and told him to be careful. I hear knocking on my window and door for a few minutes. Then he leaves. He calls me back at 12 and says something about being almost out of state. Dave lives that far and he is nearing a semi-abandoned rundown town which will remain anonymous, with nothing for miles ahead. It is cold out, so I tell Mike to just come back, and we'll both go back to the station and tell them about the town. It is about to turn 2 a.m. when he gets back and we go in. The officer on our case has a laugh, saying something about us being vampires as we are always up at night. Mike tells him about the town he went to. The cop obviously looks a bit pissed that we did not call them instead, but he goes and gets our pitifully thin file and flicks through it. He says the town is well known for shady people and there are a bunch of them going down there about drug smuggling, so they will dispatch someone to look for people under my description in a couple of days. I am still waiting for them to call. I have moved back into Mike's room and the CCTV has finally been installed. In the garden pathway, unfortunately, not directly overlooking my apartment. I will try to keep you guys updated as soon as they call me down with suspects or what is happening. I think this will be my last update for a long while now. Thank you for everyone's concern. I am sorry I did not update sooner. I am okay now, but I am feeling pretty sick, so this might turn out a bit short. The world has been good to me this week for once. I had not seen Dave, which I hoped was because the squad maybe, just maybe, might have caught him. They called me down on Sunday with a line of 5 men varying in levels of creep. None of them were him. The cop that brought them in hauled them all out, and I let them know that none were Dave. Nothing happened on Sunday night, but I knew he was out there. I was not even feeling scared anymore. Mike and the police assured me it would all be okay. Monday night came and I was home from work with Mike on our bottom floor veranda when we heard this awful scraping and then smashing of glass in the archway that leads to our apartment complex garden. Like clockwork, we ran out and climbed over the veranda fence, pepper spray in my hand. We got over to the archway and, of course, Dave was there. He had this big iron poker in his hand and was jabbing the security camera overhead. He looked down and saw Mike and me, Mike in front, and flipped the hell out. Poker in front, he ran headfirst for Mike and all my adrenaline kicked in. Mike had already ducked out of the way, but I extended my arm as far as I could and sprayed my pepper spray twice in his eyes. He dropped the poker and started screaming for his life. It was seriously the worst scream I've ever heard. He was rolling into the glass and coughing and clawing at his eyes. Mike grabbed him and held his hands behind his back, pinning him down on the floor. He shouted at me to go back and get my phone, so I ran back into the house and called the police. I came back on the veranda and climbed out. All our neighbors were on their balconies looking down, including our neighbor Antonio, this huge bulky Mexican bodybuilder, even bigger than Mike. Dave was struggling big time, so I called up to Antonio for help and came back over to Mike. He had Dave pinned down, but he was trying hard to keep him down. He was kicking Dave in his head every time he moved, but I told him to stop and that the police would be here any minute. Antonio came down the stairs and Mike had him down by his legs, while Antonio had his head eating dirt. The police arrived minutes later, 3 officers with guns drawn, but by that time Dave had given up. They put him in the car and took him away. We were at the station until 4 in the morning, exhausted but still in shock from everything that happened. I took the day off yesterday, just to stay home and mull over everything. There is the first trial in a couple of hours, but I am not going. I do not want to see his godforsaken face ever again. So, Dave, I hope you rot in prison so we never have to meet again. A couple of years ago, I found myself in a very disturbing situation. I was getting off work at my student internship in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it had been snowing all day. Now for all of you who live in the South, you know it is a big deal when they even call for snow, and grocery stores are raided the nights before. I had decided to go and get some groceries to enjoy with my girlfriend, who was now my wife since the mayhem had ended and only people like me who had trucks or all-terrain vehicles could get around. I went into Walmart and got the groceries I needed and started my way back to my truck. It had started to snow harder, and there was already about 5 to 7 inches on the ground. It was around 12 in the afternoon. I was daydreaming about sledding and watching movies the next couple of days with my girlfriend. Just then, as I almost reached my truck, I was jolted by the act of someone grabbing my arm. As I turned around, I saw an older-looking lady who was maybe 5'6" tall. She asked me if I had cigarettes. I don't smoke, so I told her no, I did not, and turned back to my truck. Again, she gently tugged on my arm and then told me that she had just gotten here from Alabama on a bus with her granddaughter and dog. She said she was here for breast cancer treatment and wanted money for a hotel. Again, I honestly told her I had no money on me, which I purposely avoid carrying because I do not like donating to people's drug habits. I would rather get people food myself if that is what they really want. At this point, she said, "Do you know the area well?" Wanting to get out of this situation, I said no, I did not, which was a lie, thinking she would now leave me alone. Then she asked, "Oh, okay, well, since the weather is so bad, will you drive me to my hotel so I can meet up with my granddaughter and her dog who are in the hotel lobby? It is right up the road here, I can show you." Being a Christian, I was always taught to help people out. So even though everything at this moment told me to deny this woman again, I told her sure. Since I was raised on the rule, never judge a book by its cover, plus being a male at 6 foot tall, I figured I could take her if things got dicey. So she jumped in my truck against all odds, and the next thing I knew, she was smoking a cigarette in my truck. I told her politely to please put it out. Being nervous, I missed my first red flag when she asked me for a cigarette, since she obviously had some. She obliged and threw the cigarette out the window to my dismay. So we started driving up the road towards her hotel, at which point I was on high alert. At the moment of going through worst-case scenarios in my head, I noticed her fumbling through her purse, searching for something and looking out of the corner of her eye at me. At which point I told her, "Just so you know, I have a gun in my truck, so do not try anything crazy." Now, I did have a gun, but it was a shotgun that I had neglected to get out of my back seat a couple of days earlier. And in reality, this would do me no good if she pulled a gun on me at that moment. At this, she stopped messing around in her purse and pulled out her cell phone from her pocket. She looked at me and said, "Actually, do you mind taking a detour? I need to pick up some money from some friends. Okay, at this point in time, red flags were firing off. But again, never judging a book by its cover kept running through my mind. So I told her that was fine, but we had to make it quick because I needed to get home. At that moment, she dialed someone on the phone and said, "Yeah, this guy is coming over to bring me to get the stuff. You are ready, right?" At that point, I asked her to talk to the person. When I answered the phone, a man who sounded like he had been chain smoking since birth said, "Hello." I started asking him questions like, "What is your name?" and asked him if indeed he knew of any hotels nearby. He seemed to stumble over his words, then said he had to go. At this point, I should have gotten a clue and kicked her out of my car, especially after watching so many horror movies. This is when the person goes against their gut and pays for it. But for fear of her actually telling the truth and me feeling like a terrible person, I decided to go on. At this point, we turned down the street and I saw a cop car sitting off to the side. I wanted to go drop her off with the cop, but I would have felt terrible if she was actually telling the truth. So I passed the cop. At this point, with a weird, eerie smile on her face, she said, "Glad he is there now, I feel safe." Now, as we entered the apartment complex, I saw how run down it was. It looked to be a place where heavy drug traffic was going down. Just a very unsettling place even during the snow. As I parked outside the place she said it was her friend's, she said, "Okay, I will go get the guy and be back." At this, I was very unsettled by everything. Things just did not seem right. She saw my facial expression of wanting to just get the heck out of Dodge, and to this, she sneered at me saying something along the lines of me being a terrible person if I left her there in this weather under her condition. At this, I got mad. After all, I went out of my way to help her. As I waited, I started to think about things that could happen. What if she brought back a gun or worse? At that moment, I saw 3 guys coming towards my truck. I realized things were not right. She had set me up to rob me or something because these guys were big and one of them had something behind his back, which I could not see. At that moment, I put it in reverse and took off. Thank God for 4-wheel drive. I looked back to see them chasing me and saw that what was hidden behind one guy's back was a crowbar. I do not know what would have happened to me, but now looking back, I see how dumb and blind I was. There was no hotel anywhere close to the area I was in. The nearest hotel or motel was 20 minutes away. Had I waited for the guys to get to my truck, they probably would have beaten me and robbed me or worse. I thank God every day that I escaped and was able to get married and tell this event. I have never been to that Walmart ever again, or the area for that matter. A couple of months later, I told a coworker this story, and he told me that a year ago the same lady tried the same thing on him, but he declined altogether. Smart move on his part. So, a horrible lady who lied about having breast cancer to trick people into awful things. I hope you get what is coming to you and let us never meet again. And be careful who you help out because some people will take advantage of you or even worse. This might be a bit of a long story, but it is a wild one that I do not tell many people. So strap in and imagine being in my shoes as you read this. This is actually 2 stories wrapped into one eye-opening experience. I was born and raised in the suburbs of a metropolitan area of the United States. When I was in my early 20s, my boyfriend at the time, 2 best friends, more like brothers, and one of their girlfriends decided to start a certain type of hipster store. I do not want to give too many details. Y'all are too smart. But it was in a high poverty, high violent crime area. Sounds stupid as I type it out, but this neighborhood was slowly turning into something beautiful. There were several independently owned restaurants and bars that were making such a positive impact in the area. Before jumping in 100%, Me, 23 years old, and my cousin, also 23, had heard not so great stories about this bar directly across the street from where I was going to open this business and live above. So on a random Tuesday morning around 11 a.m., we figured we would go and check it out for ourselves. We got there and this place was like any dive bar in the Midwest. Except the bartender immediately looked at us in a concerned way saying, "I don't even work here. I just live in the apartment upstairs and I saw that the regular bartender did not show up." Still, we decided to stay and take in our surroundings. We got a couple of beers and belly up to the bar, making sure to give this non-employee a decent tip because, what the hell? Then these dudes came up behind us, kind of trapping us between them and the bar. They asked for a few dollars and gave me one of their weird flip phones to hold on to as collateral. He came back about 20 minutes later, sauntered over to us, held his hand out, and showed us this white substance. He said, "I can show you a new life." My cousin and I were like, "Huh, that's interesting. We're going to go pee now." So we went to the bathroom to form an escape plan. We decided that we were going to go out, low-key tell the bartender that we did not feel safe, and try to slip away to our car which was parked behind this building. Mind you, it's only 1 p.m. These dudes followed us out and a car pulled up and opened its back door. No one got out, but they tried to grab my cousin who was smaller than me. I took her hand and ran to her car and locked the door. We both started sobbing. At this point, it was too late for me because we had already signed a building lease for this business and the living space above it. Flash forward maybe a month. I saw this transient dude who was super tall and had these very thick bottle cap glasses, which were very recognizable. He was clearly a drug dealer and potentially a pimp of some sort. About a week after we all moved in, it was a beautiful Midwest evening. We had our dogs out to go potty, and we were all standing near our new building, feeling optimistic, inspired, and so excited for what was to come. Then we heard what we all thought was a car backfiring very close, and we saw a bunch of people running and screaming, hiding around this building across the street. To me, it was like it happened in slow motion. I saw this guy I recognized, with the bottle cap glasses. He was holding what was left of his jaw, bleeding like crazy, but running to hide behind a building kitty corner from where we were. The next day, I took a walk and saw the whole trail of blood. I became super worried about what kind of stuff might happen to us with this new store and living above it. Flash forward about 3 years later, and I am taking a homelessness in society course in college because I really wanted to get involved to help this community. Despite the violence, there was such a sense of real community and caring for your neighbor. Anyway, it was a very small class, and I was one of the first students to arrive on day one. I was just minding my own business, glancing up at classmates filtering in, when I saw him. Bottle cap glasses, super tall, and now with absolutely horrible scarring on his chin. This was the guy who was in the car that pulled up next to my cousin and tried to grab her. This was also the guy who I had basically witnessed getting his jaw shot off. I was immediately frozen. I was so afraid that he would recognize me. Then we went around our little class to explain why we each decided to take this course. He went first and explained how he was involved in some really terrible things, that he had gotten shot in the face and sent to prison, where he discovered that he wanted to change and help this community instead of being a stain, as he said. We all clapped. I never told him that I was there. He was nice enough. I'm sure it would have been okay for me to bring it up, but I just did not want to open any wounds for him. Very small world, even in big cities. I hope you are still doing well, but I'd rather not meet again. And to the other guys at that bar my cousin and I went to, let's absolutely never meet again because that was terrifying.